results out of the officiating thing that came out that surprised you, or that you feel really we should pay more attention to, other than making it worthwhile for people to stay on? It is a job. They've got to like it, or they've got other options, other jobs that they can go to. I know my 3 sons looked at it, it was a job because they didn't have to work anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
This gave them all the spending money they needed during the winter, and it was fairly good money.
Yeah, I'd like to see the retired guys compensated again to work with the younger, mentally young. I'd like to see that and put it in place, because I think there's a lot of like a wasted amount of experience there. And then I think, you know, some people who are retired would consider, I would, if I was at that, you know, I was an incentive to come back and help these young.
Oh, yeah.
I would. If I was compensated, you know, I'm not large dollar comes in my gas
Yeah.
for me to be there, I would do that. I would really give back.
You're taking time from your family. And at that point, you've got to, I mean, there is a cost, you know, a cost benefit that you have to take a look at.
Yeah.
I like the idea of the coaching, so they're not evaluated.
Yeah.
And if they can come back and coach them.
You like the what?
Like where maybe some of these people come back as mentors. So they're helping them get better, so that when they do get evaluated by the supervisors,
Right.
they'll do better.
Yeah.
And I think that's, because if you're being evaluated by the supervisor has to show that they've done evaluations. I always said teachers hate giving tests, but they have to give tests to justify the marks.
That's right.
So everybody hates the tests, and you don't have time to teach anymore. And we've got the same problem in all sports, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that would be interesting, but again, it's, you know, who can you get to come out, and it is a job.
It is a job, but again, the realm is so big for that, for your referee that's overlooking all your referees in your association to get out there and actually, it would be impossible for him, you know, a coach. We have one guy looking after, let's say, an association, you might have 60 referees, right? We divide our kids up into 12 or 13 or 14 kids, and we have 3 or 4 guys looking after them.
Yeah, succession planning sucks up here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's the same all over. It becomes it is a monetary thing,
But we just might have to eat the bullet.
Absolutely.
Because if it's one of the biggest concerns people have, then the rest of their investment in the sport is not.
But is it really a big concern, or is it just a concern at the elite level? That's, you know, a lot of times everything's always at the higher end, you know. And I think sometimes
where the emphasis on winning is a little more focused.
Yeah.
We lose the world championship, and our entire program is gone. Let's revamp the whole thing.
Yeah, we've been there twice for a gold medal, but yeah, we got to start over again.
It's true. How do you separate it? I mean, you're on a board now. Is it mixed with the House League and the rep now?
No, just House League.
So it's just House League.
Just House League.
We may start to see that. There may be almost a little competition. But we've had just House League for a long time, haven't we?
Ever since I've been involved, we've always had two boards. And now the outlying areas, I think Sudbury's the only one that doesn't have you're in the sport.
But I'll tell you, we have a VP of Housing now. We've tried to split it a little more, and with a VP of Housing right now. And I'll tell you, House League runs a lot better. And it's not a knock to the VPs.
No.
It's just the emphasis is not so much on winning and winning at all costs. The emphasis is on more respect. I think the last part of the words on officiating is, you know, we bring Jim Danino into our parent coaches meetings just before the season goes, right, to talk about emphasis on the rules or any changes. You know, puts a face to the officiating, what they're going to be calling, issues, how you know, if you feel you've got real beef, what the process is to report it and put your name on it. Put your bloody name on it.
Yeah,
I'm not going to read it.
Exactly.
You know? Stand up.
But I don't see I don't see people, again, at the younger ages. I watched a lot of young kids play hockey. And I've seen we all see all kinds of mistakes out there, and I don't hear the berating like you do if that was a AAA game. And now, mind you, that guy can still make the same mistake. I mean, he could be looking at and he might not see it, and that's fine. But I don't see the berating of the younger kids as much in the let's call it recreational hockey, which I think all hockey is recreational until you get paid to play. But But I just don't see any berating at the lower levels. You will always get one or two, granted, you know, you might get a coach, you might get an upset parent, but I don't see them dwelling on it after the game. Oh, we lost the game because the referee blew this call.
Right.
You know?
No, I don't see it either. I
Yeah.
concur with you. When we're at the board meeting, I hear it more from our higher end coaches,
Yeah.
ban a midget bitching about the ref
Yeah.
and the inconsistency, or this guy's got it out for our team,
Mhm.
kind of a, attitude, right?
But then the support, another thing that came out of there was there should maybe be more support. I'll tell you, for years at the Renegades tournament, that used to be back in the day, like when I first started 33 years ago. Every team, not every team, but you could be sure 30% of the teams when they lost their game, it's because of the referees. It was never because of the other team all scored them, right? It was always the referees.
You didn't
right?
give credit to the other team,
Yeah.
yeah.
And you know what? You get immune to that, eh? And you get immune to it, and now when people come up and complain, I just tell them that doesn't even hit the top 20 complaints over the last 30 years.
Yeah.
You're not even close. Come on,
Yeah.
give me someone with a bit of bite on it. But here and after 30 years, it's no big deal anymore.
Yeah.
It's going to happen again.
In all my years coaching, I never had a referee call a bad game that I won.
Yeah, absolutely. And only 50% of his calls were argued.
We won the game and we beat the sixth man too. I hear that a couple of times, so yeah. Gives them a pat in the back.
It's interesting though, that I think when we have to take a look at what we're developing, and this is why I keep coming back to the fact that maybe we have to look at full-time referees as being a team. And that's how they're getting into the game. Because my son's a police officer today in Peel, and I guarantee you it's because he was a referee from the age of 11.
Mm-hmm.
The skills that he took out from being a referee, that ability to remain cool, to be calm, to know that every call you make, 50% of people are going to agree and 50% of people are going to disagree. And your job is the safety of the people that you're responsible for, not toward your feelings. And all of this stuff, and all of them, Warren, Ryan, they did the same thing. But there was one comment that was made that made me think of my son Ryan. He quit refereeing when he became involved in a career that involved financial management.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason he quit it was he couldn't afford to be doing a game where one of his clients or potential clients heard somebody else calling him names on the ice and berating him
That's
in
interesting.
the lobby,
That's
and
very interesting.
running him down in the lobby because as individuals we hear people complaining about the character of the official. We don't think that that's berating him as an official when he's got the shirt on.
Yeah.
That's who he is as a person.
Mm-hmm.
And he left the game
Yeah,
because he
that's-
said he couldn't afford that kind of reputation.
That makes so much sense, eh? Oh.
And that drove him out.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
And I think it's keeping a lot of good coaches from going behind the bench because they hear everybody else running down the coach. There's a lot of good people that may want to get into coaching, but they don't want to put themselves out where they have to listen to people who really
But
are
I don't-
uninformed.
I don't think that same scenario for referees would be as bad, because that absolutely makes sense with your son there. Like, yeah, he's gonna deal with one of his clients, and he's fine. Well, how do you go up and ask him for business or whatever? I think a coach is a little different because usually not all parents are gonna be on the same page. You might have one irate parent, but maybe sometimes you're doing something.
My website, After the Whistle, I get letters quite often from people, and this past winter I got one from a person who's having a problem with their son's coach, who happened to be the husband of her best friend, was her maid of honor. Having a serious problem, and it a number of emails going back and forth, and it was a situation where she was risking having their friendship destroyed because of the conflict she was having with the husband, and it was just because of the hockey situation.
Over recreational sport.
Yeah, I know. And
Friendships
so
have
you've
lost,
got
yeah.
this,
Yeah.
you've got these human, involvements, and to me, I do think because of the politics in the game, that a lot of good coaches are probably in the stands because they just
Well,
don't
it's
wanna
it's the
risk it.
responsibility. You're not only asked to coach, right? You're asked to basically mentor. You're asked to set boundaries for discipline. You're asked you're going to be a psychologist. You've got to be you've got to handle money
Mhm.
as an organization.
Sounds like teaching description.
Yeah, you are a jack of all trades, and how much support do you get from organization to organization to back your ass up? I mean, there's a liability,
And you're
it's calculated risk for a lot of coaches.
And you're being criticized.
And you're being criticized, yeah.
Every
So-
decision.
No, I know, believe me, we put this minor midget program together the last few years. Attracting a quality coach with no personal conflict or no personal connection is hard.
6 degrees of separation.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, like you're related to somebody.
It is, and it's hard to do for organizations. I mean, yeah, the Sioux, I'm talking to the Sioux guys, yep, there's no connection, right?
No.
They bite the bullet, but that's how they do things. And they have a pretty successful program.
I know in the Valley, when I first started coaching rep hockey in '85 there, you weren't allowed to coach your own. You couldn't even have stick boys.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Well, that wasn't their choice. That was put in by the parents, right, at the AGMs, I guess,
Oh,
years
yeah,
ago,
sure.
and they kept it in there. And then I believe in the early '90s, they voted whether you were short of coaches or whatever, but they voted that you could. And my kids were still playing at the time, but I chose not to coach them at that level. I coached a rep level team, but not their team, because I enjoyed that. And I also had assistants, and I didn't have any parent involvement.
That's unique today.
Yeah, I didn't have anybody involved on the team who had a kid on the team. I kept an independent coaching staff, and I think you came up the same way, Bob.
Well, no,
You got in
I spent
after.
1 year, and when I saw that my marriage survived with
Yeah.
4 teams in the house and me being gone to my traveling team, I figured that was the last year I was gonna do that. It's just, everything, because we had 4 teams.
The best coaches are separated.
But you know what, at the same token, that's not to say that we did not have very good coaches that coached their own son. And it's not to say either that you swipe every coach by the same brush because they're coaching their own son, because you have good and bad no matter what.
Mhm.
You know,
It is tough to coach your
Yeah.
own son.
in house league it's necessary. In
Yeah.
house league, you'd never get any coaches. You could never mandate that rule.
I was only kicked out of 1 game in my entire life, and that was because of something that happened to my son, and I just lost it.
Yeah.
As a parent.
Yeah,
They-
you became a parent.
I never got kicked out over any injuries or anything for any other players. But this one particular time, I just called the referee everything I could think of.
Yeah,
as
you
I was
become a
walking
parent
out,
then, yeah.
And that was the only time that I was, up to that point, I was proud of the fact is that, you know, doesn't matter how much hard time I give the referees, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I never lose control.
I felt,
And that time I lost.
I felt bad for Collie Campbell's kid, you know, all those years.
Oh, yes.
I did, I felt for that. I mean, I've coached my son, and it's tough, you know, I couldn't put a C on my son's, and he, you know, he probably deserved it in some years to wear the C, you know, as a leader, not maybe the best kid on the ice, but I couldn't do it. I would have been, you know, I would just, damned if you do, I would have took a lot of abuse for it, right?
Right.
And so would have he, so I just chose that we're not gonna do that to you.
Yeah.
I think a lot of coaches do the same as you do.
Yeah,
They do,
yeah,
and
it's-
and you know what,
it's fair to the child.
I don't think I bet you your son never said anything either, and because.
I tell you, you know, he wanted
Yeah, a
to
little
wear
better,
it,
yeah.
you know, he wanted, I mean, he's
Sure,
got
that's-
some leadership skills, and I think and we talk about teaching, you know, all those skill sets beyond their hockey careers that'll carry them through life,
Yeah.
and that's what a lot of this is about. I mean, the things I have, I got from the sport, not just hockey, baseball, I played
Yeah.
lacrosse, I played rugby, but, you know, the team building, you know, being part of a team, you know, working for a common objective or a goal, goal setting, those intangible, you know, what's right, what's wrong, when you're over the line, or playing close to the edge, but not quite, you know.
Not quite there, that's right.
Yeah, and you know what, those are the skill sets that I want, you know, my children to take out of sport, and, you know, me and my wife both impress that upon them throughout their sport.
And I've seen that, and Bob has too, like when you see these, again, you see these kids are coaching now, that they put it back in, and they were good. Yeah, how many great players have we seen as an 7 or 8-year-old or a 9-year-old? There's a long way between 8 and 9 and 19 and 20, and you look at them today, look what how they're
The panel guys, like Drew Bannister is going to be a great coach.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, Moxon came back to coach minor
Yeah.
hockey. You know, these guys are coming back to
Mhm.
coach and leave their mark on these
Yeah.
young athletes.
They got something out of it, and they're putting it back in,
Yeah.
and they're keeping the trend going. Their kids are going to be the same way.
That's right.
How is this going to be continued between now and the next summit? As the NOHA discussed how they're gonna continue the dialogue? I know what we're doing here is continuing dialogue.
Yeah, exactly. This is a good.
We're gonna do it for the next little while, but are there gonna be smaller summits, or hopefully maybe there'd be a summit in the valley.
You know what I think you're gonna see, the end result out of this? You're gonna come up, let's say next year at the AGM meeting or in
Yeah,
2 years.
and
people are-
it's in Timmins next year,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
people are gonna say, wow, you should see our volunteers now, you should, you know, we've done something, we put something in place to get more referees, we got something out of this. We're not struggling for volunteers anymore, we're getting people out. I think that'll be your measuring stick.
Right,
And
right.
if you see an association die because they don't have any volunteers, well, maybe they were the ones that didn't show up.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and I think you're gonna see more cooperation
Yeah.
in those kind of ways,
Yeah.
and I've seen it already, and I think the NOHA will have to really take a leadership role, and here's how I see it playing out. We're gonna disseminate the information, it's gonna be available to the membership again, and, you know, it's going to be, with the way communications are today, I can see free player movement. If I were asked to
I can
chair
see that
that committee by the NOHA, I'd strongly consider it, or someone like
Mhm.
yourself even, Jim, you know, asked by the NOHA.
Yeah.
Someone they trust and they brings a balanced approach to it. As asked to chair something, you know, any one of these outcomes or recommendations, then we were going to enlist the grassroots again, saying, fellow up in Timmins, would you like to sit on the committee and represent New Liskert or Kirkland Lake?
Get a great
And
cross.
we'll do it by Skype, we'll do it by, maybe we do it, at times we'll get together at AGM and have a sort of a session aside from the
Mhm.
AGM to work through the details, but I think it'll be the grassroots that drives these pilot projects forward. And of course, then, the council directors bring them back to the directorship, and at the AGMs, we'll change constitutional things, and we'll make some of these things happen. I think we have to have things happen immediately.
Yes.
And of course, some are longer
Yeah.
term, as we talked about.
But
Jim,
you can't see it coming, the boundary's gonna be,
Oh.
you are
It's inevitable.
seeing it coming.
It's in other sports now, it's coming, and.
I mean, the nickel, the outlying areas this year, we're all one association.
Yeah, there'll be growing pains, but I love it. I
Yeah.
said, anybody who says that's terrible,
Yeah.
that's gonna
No.
hurt Sudbury, I said, whoa, wait a minute,
It's not.
back up
Yeah.
a minute here. I'm a Sudbury guy,
Yeah.
but you know what, I have a lot of good friends in that do good things in the district, who I'm in touch with a lot, and I respect what they're doing. They share that, communicate, they tell us.
That's right.
If I'm being told and I'm being kept in the loop, then there are no surprises. And then I'm more than willing to go to bat for anybody who keeps us, this weekend was about communication lines.
Yes, huge on communication.
Oh.
I really think that the idea, and I don't know if it was the organizing committee or the NOHA, but the idea to put all the presentations online is gonna be the intermediate step to putting the summit online. And when you've got a situation like the boundary changes, it's so easy for you to actually go and videotape a panel discussion where you've got the presentations of both sides. And you put that online and you have some discussion questions so that people back in their home organizations can actually play it. They can have a meeting with a group in a room, play that. Now it's like they have 2 guest speakers coming in.
It's a webcast.
And they can have their discussion. And they can do it on demand. They don't need to wait and change their schedule. So I can see that by using that technology, because if you had this in the soup, you'd have a different group of people going to that summit.
Yes.
It's like, because it was close proximity to Sudbury, I don't know what the percentage was, but there was probably a larger percentage
Yeah.
from Sudbury.
Yeah.
And if you move it to North Bay, or you move it to Cap, if you move it around, because you've gotta do it to be fair, you're gonna find different people congregating. And
I'm not sure it's about fair, I think it's about getting the most people out to make it easier access, and it's not about, having it in Hearst, I don't think.
Some of it was a
and-
venue. Venue drove a lot of it too,
Yeah.
right? With the numbers, right?
Yeah.
Of course, our committee was predominantly Sudbury,
Yeah.
North Bay, and so that had a bit of a resonance to it. But I think the AGM will address that when we do move around and have smaller committees to work on these little issues.
And I could see a hotel in the soup going through the summit at the same time you've got it going on in Sudbury, like you say, simulcast.
Yeah.
That to me makes sense.
That would solve, yes, that would solve your,
And you can have the discussions, you can listen to the discussions back and forth between cities, because we've done it with the school board. I mean, technology.
data, you're absolutely right.
So now you really
Never thought
cut
of that.
down the cost,
Yeah, exactly.
and you have people from all over the place assembling, and then you've got the large screen.
We want to be inclusive, and that, if, you know, it's gonna take longer that way, but you know what, you're gonna get a better product in the end.
Yeah, it's communication, discussion.
Yeah.
Pretty much close to time, or?
Yeah, I have to get my,
Yeah, we don't wanna have you late.
get on the road.
Derek Erickson, Chair of the Organizing Committee with the NOHA Summit and Director of Summer Minor Hockey. You are coming back next Monday?
I'm here.
Okay, we're not sure.
I might bring a friend or two.
Yeah, we might have somebody from the NOHA coming in. We're gonna take a short break.